One of the first things the church needs to do and realise is that every human, doesn't matter what age you are, male, female, gay, straight, no matter who you are, we are all profoundly sexual beings. I think one of the things we have to start with is a good definition of sexuality, one that is far broader than what we currently hold. My definition of sexuality is really about our need to know and be known, our need to love and be loved, our longing for intimacy and connection with the other. So the greatest commandments are about loving God and about loving others, spirituality and sexuality in its broadest sense. We look at aspects of our sexuality that are social, our social sexuality, if you will, rather than just the act of sex. Why that's important, we take the analogy of we only love God by prayer, which is only one aspect of how we give our worship to God. But there are multiple ways that we love God and give our worship to Him, just as there are multiple ways that we can love others. And that's the expression of our sexuality, rather than limiting it to one aspect of who we are. But it's very hard, I think, to engage in the depth of relationship that I think God has for us, unless we broaden our understanding of sexuality. We need to look at ways that we can not only educate every person, but help them to understand their sexuality in deeper ways so that they don't feel threatened or fearful of their sexuality. For instance, we see sexuality limited usually to our teenagers or to married people. So when we as a church talk about sexuality, it's at youth group, or it's you read your marriage books, that are written because you can have sex when you get married. And of course we want to make sure we tone down those crazy hormones of the teenagers. So we're doing all of our talks in those two categories, assuming in some way that everybody else is asexual. And what it sets up is that people that are not married, for instance, single people that might even be older in life, we feel like that they're not sexual beings, and that we limit our sexuality so that they feel that they can't have any substance of relationship. So we need a new conversation about sexuality, but that's going to be hard. It's going to require some work on our behalf. It's going to require that we look at some of our fears, because to have a conversation, a real conversation about sexuality, it's going to require some vulnerability. And that's not easy for any of us, and it's going to require us as communities to do that. It's not an individual thing. Well, it begins with the individual, but it must be in the context of the community. Our society and our culture is full of people that long for deep intimacy, that long to know what it is to be loved and to love and to know and to be known by others in ways that are sustaining and life-giving. If God is the creator of sexuality, then surely we're the ones that ought to embody our sexuality in ways that people look at us and say there's something different about the way they express themselves. And I fear that our boundaries and our fear is actually stopping us from being the people that God has called us to be. Fully integrated, wholesome people, showing what it is to have depth of intimacy and connecting with one another in ways that are life-giving and sustaining.